My name is Dr. Irina Schurov. I'm a nutritional neuroscientist and healthy brain solution expert for children. What is going on and what we can do about it, and that's why we're here today to discuss. Do you know that every second child nowadays got some kind of medical condition? Do you realize that in Europe, 1 in 110, and in US, the latest statistics, 1 in 46 child is diagnosed with autism. 1 in 10 got ADHD or ADD, and the list is continuing and continuing on, and we experience that exponential numbers growing. When I hear that statistics, when I feel that something we can do, and especially starting from today at everyday foundational level, and we can change a lot. So I just would like to share with you a few facts, few stories, few scientific findings. I find myself fascinating. I'm a scientist from the background. I've got PhD in neuroscience and a nutritional therapy diploma, because I feel these two lines going together really well. Because I've been scientist, I've been mom, and felt hopeless, and only when I started to close this gap, we can actually do lots of magic things. Learning disorders keeps growing, and this is only, the main ones, and I can continue for another 3 pages. Also, what is important to know, it's not about just the learning. These kids who've got some challenges in the school end up with the bigger challenges when they finish school, because they're not able to integrate into society well. They can't handle their problems, they can't communicate their needs properly. So it's really much bigger problem in the family, in the society overall. So the early intervention we can do, then better for everyone. When we do the scan of brain, people affected by ADD, so there is a different 7 types at least. And there is no morphological, anatomical differences between normal, whatever normal is brain, and with the brain of child who was diagnosed with ADD. It's only on a biochemical, a physiological level we can see the differences. It means we can change that, because biochemistry can be changed. So there is a empowering information behind all that. So there is so much can be done in order to change that situation. Whatever diagnosis is or a condition, so it's all about sort of a disconnecting brain, as we just discussed. So it's not label, it's not as okay, this is the autism. That's why it's whole spectrum, because every child is different. ADD, ADHD, whatever neurological conditions or learning disability, or not disability, but difference, I would say. So it's all come to functional disconnection in the brain, which would be nice to sort of understand a little bit more and understand why that's happening and what we can do about it. What is clear now, that background of all these conditions are quite multifactorial. And we used to think, so the gene expression is playing important role, but now we understand it's only minor. It's up to 30% in the maximum. Any other chronic condition, there is no single 1 or 2 or 3 particular genes associated with autism. That's very clear. So that's true for any other conditions we're talking about today. What we know for sure, that environmental factors playing huge role, the lifestyle playing huge role. That's what we understand now. And I think the problem nowadays that we understand, and especially that our kids understand our gadgets better than their own body. So we kind of lost that connection, ability to tune in and understand what my body is trying to tell me. We try to ignore these signs and symptoms. We try to take the paracetamol when we've got headache. Wrong approach. Headache is there, or the temperature in your child is for the reason. Don't just give him Calpol and send to bed. Try to understand what his body is trying to tell you. Genetics is like a hardware in your computer. Epigenetics, it means above genetics. So whatever happening with your genetic information, when it's actually translated to real proteins, to real enzymes, to real molecules doing the job, all these factors, including radiation, food, negative emotions, stress, all that epigenetic factors playing huge role how that translation process will happen. We really learned that we can switch on and switch off certain genes. So we can activate and deactivate or put in a silence certain genes which can play a huge role how our child is developing, performing, or sort of bridging that perhaps some kind of gaps or issues he had at early childhood. The diet, we're going to focus on here, and the microbiome. That's my territory of expertise. And of course, there is a certain factors we can't change, like seasons, but there is most of it we can influence and adapt and change to some degree at least. Microbes, microbiome, what is this? So microbiome we call forgotten organ, which is actually located somewhere inside. So it's about 1.5 to 2 kilograms, depends how big we are. So, and it's a combination of different species of microbes, viruses, parasites, all living organisms basically. We call it the second brain because it's basically about more than 100 million neurons built in the wall of your gut, which is actually digestive system, if you can imagine, it's about 9 meters tube, just compressed inside of our body, depends on how compact we are. And there is lots of things going on in this sort of a system, if you want. We can trace back up to 90% of all human illnesses back to unhealthy gut. Lots of useful molecules can be produced by those microbes, like 90% of your serotonin or 50% of your dopamine can be made in a gut. So the gut is playing huge role. What is also important to understand that 90% of genetic material in our human body actually have got bacterial origin. So that's why when we see how they're spreading, you know, these vineyards with the pesticides and everything, it's surely killing us as well, because we are 90% also microbes. We know there is a big connection between gut and brain, and that's been shown in many different ways. In Finland, they monitored 75 babies from birth to up to 6 months. So they put them into groups, and one group was receiving probiotics from birth up to 6 months, and then they monitored them for another 13 years, which I think is very good study because it's quite lengthy and it's not many studies done like that. So what they found in 13 years, the group which received probiotics had a 0% of diagnosis like ADHD and ASD, whereas the 17% of kids in another group had one or another condition. So this is huge. For me, it's showing lots of kids nowadays already born with a not optimal microbiome, and the care from the very beginning and monitoring the signs and symptoms of development of child and his gut health, very important for development brain function. Another study in US was done again. It's a small group but very good study where they had two groups. And one group put on Ritalin, which is the medication they give kids with ADHD. And another one was given probiotic and certain nutritional support. So they found, in terms of symptoms they were targeting, the focus and concentration and academic performance, kids did equally well, where the Ritalin got lots of side effects, and probiotics and nutritional support, of course, got only positive side effects. So, gut-brain communication, it's basically happening in three main ways. The gut microbes interact with the immune system, which communicates with the brain. And actually, 80% of immune system is in the guts. The immune system of the baby is established during first 3 years of the life. And that's why if baby's immune system is not well established, because the babies may be ill, the microbiome is not there, they've got infections, antibiotics and other things. So then we've got only 30% of space to operate and improve the situation, which is still a lot, but first 3 years of the life very important for many reasons. The gut releasing hormones and various neurotoxins which affecting brain, especially when the child is young and there is no blood-brain barrier in place. That really sort of toxins just floating around and can set up neuroinflammation to the high level, which again, working with the kids with autism a lot, so we can see big proportion of them actually start to regress about 18 months and 2.5 years old, because that's why the toxins start accumulating and affecting the brain. Why the gluten and casein the bad guys? Because undigested gluten and casein, called glutamorphins and casomorphins, for very good reasons. They've got the opioid effect on our body. That's why when the glutamorphins can go and affect the brain of our children, and they feel little bit like under narcotic effect, they feel like they've been taking drug, that's really impacting a lot their behavior and school performance, because sometimes it's just impossible to concentrate, because if you have a glass of wine, you feel obviously not in your best performance going to school and study. So back to bacteria. So there is a different type of bacteria. There is a beneficial bacteria, there is a pathogenic bacteria, which is only about 5%, and there is opportunistic bacteria. So beneficial bacteria doing lots of good things we already discussed, and more. Opportunistic bacteria is very interesting because it depends on the situation in your body. So if enough good bacteria and they're taking sort of care of opportunistic bacteria, these guys behave okay and they do a good job as well. But if beneficial bacteria is not present in a quantity enough, and that's why they're called opportunistic, they're like politicians. They just, oh, okay, we're going to be bad guys. I compare our body is like a walking sort of a planet with the different ecological systems. And each ecological system has its own living organism. So we've got something in a hair, on a skull, in a nose, on the skin, but the biggest, of course, inside, in the stomach. And as I mentioned, there is the good guys and the bad guys. And when you talk to children, it's always nice to compare with something. So I say there is a tummy buddy and tummy buddy. So there is the good guys and the bad guys. So when they want sweets, when they want some kind of fast food or something, you always say you actually feed bad guy rather than the good guy. The good buddy one will help you to focus, to study, to concentrate better, to achieve whatever you like. So always sort of positive association helps. What can damage our gut and the gut our kids if it hasn't been damaged from the beginning? The list is big. The biggest, of course, antibiotics, the stress, per diet, diseases, all the chemicals around us, pollution, radiation, and things like that. Sugar is the biggest one, and when we work with the kids and having them at home, it's always the biggest issue. So why the sugar is actually bad? Of course, you all know that the sugar giving that kind of quick energy, and the kids can go over the place, and then the energy is depleted. But also, it's a suppressing immune system. It's been shown that, the sugar can cause 50% reduction of number white blood cells, so which is important. It's also depleting minerals from the body. And this is, I think, the huge, because every child, practically every child I come across nowadays is malnourished. We're all lacking minerals and vitamins in spite of eating reasonably well. It's just it's just not these essential elements enough in the food we're eating. It might be very pretty, but it's kind of empty inside. But when we eat sugar, metabolism of one molecule sugar required 56 molecules of magnesium, for example, plus zinc, calcium, and etc., etc. All that kind of limited resources our kids need in head, in central nervous system to keep them stable, focus, perform well, redistributing here to digest sugar. Of course, the sugar is food for bad bacteria as well. It's causing inflammation. It's hijacking the brain's reward pathway because they need a dopamine. They need that kind of feeling good. They're eating something sweet. They feel good, and then just poof. And it's increasing appetite as well. The amount of sugar we're eating and drinking in some kind of processed food and processed drinks is just enormous. The question is, what can be done about all that things we discussed? There is lots of things can be done. So first of all, we just need to be aware there is that amount of toxins around us, and they come in a different form and colors. The GMOs, pesticides, antibiotics, and the dyes, preservatives, MSG, household chemicals, personal care products, plastic everywhere. This is very common, but the children getting very sensitive. And all these little things, they just accumulate additionally on top of the compromised immune system, compromised microbiome, compromised gut. It's like a Russian doll, it's like a matryoshka, so it's getting another layer and another layer and another layer. When you start to be aware of that and try to eliminate, you start to see big things. There is lots of positive things we can do. There is a positive impact of food and diet on our microbiome. So, for example, again, another little study in Finland, when they looked the kids aged between 6 and 8, and they just kind of monitor their academical progress again based on food diaries and monitoring what they've been eating. So they can see that really healthy diet improves reading skills through a certain period of time. Of course, it's not instant, and that's we also need to realize there is no magic sort of a pill, but definitely there is a correlation. Brain is a 60% fat. It's the fattiest organ in our body. That's very important to remember because we need to provide that fat, which is important for brain function, for brain development. That's why the omega-3 fatty acid is important, and you probably heard about it, because it's a 1/3 of the brain grains matter. Fat is energy, very important source of energy and nutrients. At the end of the day, we need to understand that eating sugar rather than fat makes you fat, ill, and low in energy, and the same with the children. Just one small example. This is the handwriting of the 6-year-old child in the beginning, and then after intervention, the same child, the same text, only 1 month after being on omega-3. And I don't say that every child you're going to give the fish oil will do the same, but that particular child did absolutely fantastic. And I can see that's really working for many children in a different way, but definitely a big improvement can be seen. So what actually means be brain fit? As we mentioned, eating plenty good, smart fats, like seeds, nuts, animal fat, olive oil, fish, things like that. Eating fermented food and probiotics, which is absolutely essential for gut and microbiome, which is connecting to the brain, as we learned. Eat plenty of fresh vegetables and fruits because it's providing lots of vitamins and minerals, and enzymes which helping to digest the food, that nutrients actually from the gut getting to your cells. Drinking plenty of water and green tea as an antioxidant, very important. And again, sometimes we're asking our kids, they can't focus, they can't do that. How much water they drinking? This is the first thing to ask. Is your child having 1 to 1.5 liters of clean water every day? Probably not. because it's quite difficult. So we need to be a positive example. We need to do it as a family. Starting day with a glass of water, big clean glass of water. Having good quality sleep. I can spend whole evening talking about the sleep because it was a part of my PhD. I can't stress how important quality sleep is. It should be a certain routine every evening before child going to bed to provide the quality sleep. So if the child is twisting a lot, sweating, turning around, walking around, coming to your room, something needs to be addressed. And cultivating the right attitude, because that's also important for brain functioning and performance. There is no one-size diet. So when you see the information on the internet, oh, ketogenic diet will resolve all my solutions, or my child's solution, or low carbs diet, or vegans or vegetarian, there is no one diet for everyone. We need to understand what is working for your child and for how long, because that is also changing all the time. Depends where the digestive system is, how optimal is working. So we need one solution which needs to be revised and optimized and changed and move on. So what is working for one may be quite dangerous for another person. How to eat? In general, we need to eat organic, local, seasonal, whole and homemade. This is the best. There is lots of, as I said, the minerals and vitamins lost in the products, and it very much depends where it's come from. So if it's been shipped from far away, so by the time we're eating bananas, even the organic, so they might be only 80% empty. Because we're losing, it depends on the product, we're losing nutrients with every day of the shelf life. And you can see the percentage, for example, how many days between field and plate and how much nutrients is lost. Broccoli, cauliflower, 25 after 16 days. Garden peas, 15%. Carrots, 10%. And it's not that long period. Very often you don't know, when you buy in a shop, we don't know how many days it's been picked up before, and then it would stay for another few days at least in your kitchen, in your fridge. They did experiment when they compared carrots grown up in 60s and now the modern carrots got 45% less beta carotene in them. That's kind of food we're eating. That's why it is very important to bring that nutritional value to maximum level in the food we're eating. Vegetables more than fruits, because sometimes we say, yeah, vegetables, fruits, vegetables. When it comes to kids, of course, they more likely eat fruits. You have to keep the balance right. So if your child eats more, like 10 fruits and 0 vegetables or 1, so we need to try to shift it around a little bit. And planning your meals, very important. Breakfast is important. I know we rush in the morning, we don't have a time. So plan your morning from the evening and make sure your child have a sufficient breakfast. That's meal setting up the whole day of their performance, how the gut is working, how they're performing. They're setting up their metabolism for whole day ahead. When you explain children how to eat, and maybe even for yourselves, it could be a good idea to using some practical tools, and one of them traffic light eating, when you put food in 3 categories. And when you go shopping with your kids, you can explain, this is the green food, this is the yellow, this is the red one. So basically the green one, which help us to grow, it's not manufactured, not processed in any way, and very often you can eat it raw without any limits. The yellow food, it means you can eat it, but in a certain limit. For example, it can provide vitamins, minerals, other nutrients, but you can't overeat it, like pasta or meat and things like that. And the red light food, it's basically stop and think. You shouldn't eat it. It's all processed food, which full of artificial sweeteners, hydrogenated oils, and things like that, and sugar, of course. So just that tool might help you to explain to your child, and like a playing game every time you do shopping, or the child help you to take the products from your shopping bags, involve them, educate them all the time, not just to give the food, oh, you should eat. Why? Reading the food labels. So when you're looking the label, pay attention, trans fat. Okay, in Switzerland, we don't have a trans fat. It's not the country where it's allowed. But zero trans fat actually means 0.5 grams of trans fat in one serving. It's allowed. So it's not non-existing, it's just very low level. Another thing to keep in mind, all these added vitamins and minerals, and we think it's a good idea. Actually, it's a bad idea, because this, just imagine all this food being processed and stripped away all the minerals and vitamins, and then they just put artificial, like a sprinkle ones, and they think they should be okay. Vitamin A is a fat-soluble vitamin. It's not going to be recognized and absorbed by body when it comes with the cereal. It can actually cause certain stress in the body, because when it comes like that, sometimes our body thinks, oh, well, it's like a bug or virus. I don't know what's that. So you rather eat good quality product rather than empty products with added vitamins and minerals. In terms of sugar is important, because they're very clever in marketing. They put sugar in a different category. So if they put just all sugars in one group, the sugar would be the first ingredient. But they put it like agave nectar, maloses, the fructose, sucrose, blah, blah, blah. Everything with O's is basically sugar, plus your other products, which is clearly sweet, like honey, sweeteners and things like that. So that's also keep in mind. We think, okay, great, I'm going to buy healthy snack to my child and going for dry fruits. I personally used to buy that, while I didn't realize that practically all, very often at least, the dry fruits contain certain preservatives. E220 is a very common one, and these sulfur additives actually can be quite toxic. It's provoking asthma, destroying vitamin B1 and E, basically not recommended for consumption of children, but you always can find it in a dry fruit. So pay attention to labels. So apart from apples in that product, nothing should be, okay? Just apples. Or make your own dry apples. The same with all that kind of products, which very often kids consuming in the morning. And again, it's a worst breakfast you can maybe probably imagine, full of sugar, plus adding on top that artificial, very often synthetically made vitamins.